Bullies mock the new kid unaware he's a brutal fighter. Have you ever been judged before you even had the chance to prove who you really are? Imagine being humiliated every day just because people assume you're weak. Now imagine those same bullies realizing too late that they picked the worst possible enemy. This is the story of Lucas, a seemingly fragile boy who becomes the target of cruel bullies when he transfers to a new school. But what they don't know is that Lucas holds a deadly secret, and when the truth comes out, justice will be served in a way no one ever expected. Lucas stepped out of the car, his worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes downcast. His father gave him a brief nod before driving away. This was his third school in 2 years. He was used to being the new kid. As he walked through the hallways, he could feel the stares, whispers, stifled laughter. He didn't dress like the others. His clothes were plain with no fancy brands. His hair was cut short, practical with no trendy style, and worst of all, he kept his head down, avoiding eye contact. For the predators in this school, Lucas looked like the perfect target. It was during lunch that he had his first encounter with the bullies. Sitting alone in a corner of the cafeteria, he quietly ate his food when he heard voices approaching. And well, a lonely new kid, Brian, sneered. He was the leader of the group, tall, broad-shouldered, always flanked by his two loyal sidekicks, Max and Leo. Lucas kept eating, not looking up, but that only encouraged them. "Hey, I'm talking to you, dude." Max grabbed Lucas's tray, knocking some of the food onto the table. Lucas took a deep breath, showing no emotion. He casually picked up his juice and took a sip as if nothing had happened. "Oh, is he mute?" Leo mocked. The students nearby laughed, entertained by the scene. Brian smirked, satisfied. To him, Lucas was weak, and when weak kids didn't fight back, it meant they were just new toys waiting to be broken. Lucas quickly learned that ignoring the bullies only made things worse. Ryan and his gang saw his silence as weakness, an open invitation to escalate their torment. The next day, as Lucas walked to his locker, he felt a sudden shove from behind. His shoulder slammed into the metal, making a loud clang. "Oops, didn't see you there," Brian said mockingly, laughing with Max and Leo. Lucas adjusted his backpack and continued walking as if nothing had happened, but that wasn't enough for them. During gym class, the coach split the students into teams for basketball. Lucas ended up on Brian's team, a mistake. Every time Lucas got the ball, Brian or one of his friends would shove him, trip him, or snatch it away before he could make a move. "Damn new kid, do you even know how to play?" Max taunted after stealing the ball from him. Lucas clenched his jaw, staying silent. He wasn't here to impress anyone, he just needed to get through the day. But Brian wasn't done. As they walked back to the locker room, he stepped in front of Lucas. No, I think you're in the wrong place, kid. This school is for people who actually matter." The words didn't hurt. Lucas had heard worse, but he knew what was coming next. Brian wanted a reaction, something to justify going further. Lucas simply stared at him, his face unreadable. Then he turned and walked away. The bullies laughed. "Yeah, that's what I thought," Brian called after him. What he didn't realize was that Lucas wasn't afraid. He was calculating, and soon everything would change. By the end of the week, Brian and his gang decided it was time to take things to the next level. The new kid had been too quiet for too long, and they wanted to make sure he knew his place. It happened in the cafeteria right in front of everyone. Lucas had just picked up his lunch when he felt a heavy shove from behind. His tray flew forward, food SPL splattering across the floor. The entire cafeteria went silent for a moment before erupting in laughter. Brian stood behind him, grinning. "Oh no, did the little new kid drop his lunch? That's so sad." Max and Leo were laughing along with half the cafeteria. Students pulled out their phones, already recording. Lucas stood still for a second, his fists clenched, his breathing remained steady. Brian stepped closer. "What's wrong? Going to cry? Maybe you should run home to mommy." More laughter, more cameras. Lucas slowly looked up at Brian, his expression unreadable. That was the first time Brian felt something off. Lucas wasn't scared, he wasn't angry, he was just watching, calculating, and then he did something Brian never expected. He smiled, a small, knowing smile. Brian frowned. Before he could react, Lucas bent down calmly, picking up his tray. Without breaking eye contact, he turned and walked toward another table. The cafeteria exploded in laughter again. "That's what I thought," Brian called out, puffing out his chest, but deep inside he felt something unsettling. He had seen fear before he knew what it looked like, and whatever was in Lucas's eyes wasn't fear, it was something else entirely, and soon Brian would find out exactly what. That night, Brian, Max, and Leo sat in their usual spot at the skate park, laughing about the incident in the cafeteria. "Did you see his face?" Max chuckled. "Dude didn't even try to fight back." "Yeah, probably scared out of his mind," Leo added. Brian, however, was quieter than usual. Something about Lucas's reaction still bothered him. That smile, it wasn't the smile of someone afraid, it was the smile of someone waiting. He shook off the thought the kid was weak, that's all that mattered. The next morning, the bullies arrived at school early today. They planned to take things a step further. Max had an idea: corner Lucas behind the gym, away from teachers and cameras, and scare him so bad he'd never dare to step out of line again. But when they got there, something was off. Lucas was already waiting. He stood in the center of the empty space, hands in his pockets, looking calm, almost expectant. Well, look who's finally grown a pair," Brian sneered, stepping forward. "What you hear To beg us to leave you alone. Lucas tilted his head slightly as if considering the question, then he spoke for the first time. No, he said quietly, I'm here to warn you. Brian blinked. Warn me? He scoffed about what? Lucas took a slow step forward. About what happens when you mess with the wrong person. Max and Leo exchanged glances, confused. Brian grinned. Oh, this is cute, he said. The little new kid thinks he's tough. He reached forward, shoving Lucas's shoulder. It happened in a blur before Brian could react. Lucas's hand shot up, grabbing his wrist in a grip like iron, then one swift motion, a twist, a shift in weight, and Brian was on the ground, gasping in shock, his arm twisted behind his back. Max and Leo froze. Brian struggled, but Lucas barely applied any effort, holding him down with a strength that didn't make sense. What the hell? Brian choked out. Lucas leaned in, slightly voice calm. I grew up in a fighting gym, he said. My father's a professional trainer. I've been sparring with adults since I was 8. Brian's eyes widened. Lucas released him and stepped back, his expression unchanged. Brian scrambled to his feet, face burning with humiliation. You just got lucky, he growled. Lucas didn't answer. He just stood there waiting, and for the first time in his life Brian hesitated, because now he wasn't sure if he was the hunter anymore or the prey. Brian took a step back, his confidence shaken. Max and Leo exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Lucas stood still, hands relaxed at his sides, completely unbothered. What's wrong? he asked, tilting his head slightly. Not as fun when your target fights back. Brian clenched his fists, trying to regain control of the situation. You think one little move makes you tough, he spat. You're still just a freak, Lucas sighed. I was hoping you'd say that. Before Brian could react, Lucas moved fast, too fast. In a split second he closed the distance, sweeping Brian's legs out from under him with a precise kick. Brian hit the ground hard, the air rushing out of his lungs. Max lunged at Lucas, but Lucas sidestepped smoothly, grabbing Max's arm and flipping him onto his back. Leo, the last one standing, hesitated. His fists were clenched, but his feet wouldn't move. Lucas locked eyes with him. You really want to do this? Leo swallowed hard, and then he turned and ran. Max groaned on the floor. Brian was still gasping for breath. Lucas crouched beside him, his voice calm but firm. I could have done a lot worse, he said. But I'm not like you. Brian glared up at him, humiliated. Screw you, Lucas smirked. You already did that to yourself. He stood and walked away, leaving Brian and Max lying there, defeated, not just physically but completely stripped of the power they once had. And by the time school started that morning, the whole place had already heard what happened for the first time. Brian and his gang weren't the ones everyone feared, they were the ones everyone pied. By lunchtime the entire school was buzzing with what had happened behind the gym. Whispers filled the hallways. Students who once laughed at Lucas now looked at him differently, not with fear but with respect. Brian, Max and Leo walked into the cafeteria like they always did, but this time something had changed. The usual smug grins were gone. Brian kept his head down, his jaw tight. Max had a bruise on his arm, and Leo avoided eye contact with everyone. When they passed a group of students, someone whispered just loud enough. I heard the new kid drop them like it was nothing. Brian got wrecked. Another voice chuckled. About time. The three bullies sat at their usual table, but this time no one was watching them with admiration. They were no longer the kings of the school. Lucas, on the other hand, walked in like nothing had happened. He grabbed his tray, found a seat, and started eating alone just like before. But something was different. A few students hesitated near his table, as if considering sitting with him. One guy from the basketball team gave him a respectful nod. Even some of the girls who wouldn't have looked twice before seemed intrigued. Lucas, however, didn't seem to care. He wasn't looking for attention. He had never been. As he finished his meal, a familiar voice spoke up beside him. Hey. Lucas looked up. It was Brian. The cafeteria went silent. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Brian's face was stiff, his hands clenched at his sides. He looked like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, through gritted teeth, he muttered, We're done. I'm messing with you. Lucas studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. Brian swallowed hard, then turned and walked away. That was it. No more threats, no more insults, no more bullying. And just like that, the balance of power had shifted. Lucas had never wanted to be a hero. He didn't care about popularity or revenge. He had simply taught them a lesson. Sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should fear the most. What do you think about this story? Have you ever seen someone stand up to bullies in a way no one expected? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more incredible tales.